Okay. So now this slide pretty much summarizes what is expected out of a business analyst. Now, if you ask me what is it that a business analyst does, right? So the primary objective of a business analyst, it would be to manage the requirements. Okay. As a business analyst, you have to manage the requirements. Okay. So it is your responsibility to ensure that you understand all the requirements from the business team and pass it on to the technical team so that they can actually do the design and development. Okay, so in a way you are a bridge between the business team and the technical team, right? Now you might be wondering, why do we actually need this role, right? So obviously, why do you need somebody to sit between a business team and technical team and pass on the messages? Why can't they directly talk? We are sitting there because both the teams cannot talk to each other, right? So the business team is not well equipped to tell what all requirements are needed to be communicated to the technical team, right? Now, consider, you consider yourself as a, business person from the business team, right? So you know some business functionality, but you still will be wondering, what all requirements do I need to tell for the person to complete the IT project, right? So you'll not be clear on what all requirements have to be are to be conveyed to the technical team, right? So the business team is not well equipped to tell the requirements, and similarly the technical team also are experts in a particular technology, right? Like they know Java, they know .NET, they know a particular technology, right? So they are not well equipped to ask those right questions to understand the requirements, right? And that is where you as a business analyst come into picture, right? So you basically would be the person sitting in between the business team and then the technical team. So you have to have all that skills to understand the requirement, right? So you go talk to the business team, ask those right questions, right? So you own the requirements. So it is not the responsibility of the business team to tell you the requirements, but it is the responsibility of a business analyst to ask those right questions and ensure that all the requirements are completely captured. So if the requirement is not completely captured, you as a business analyst would be held responsible, not the business team, right? So people will be asking, okay, no, why didn't you ask those questions? Okay, so you should have that skills to engage the business team and understand the requirements. So that's the first thing that you would um, you know learn, and simultaneously, once you understand the requirement, right, you cannot just keep it on to yourself. You have to document in such a way that the technical team can understand now, right? So it is your responsibility to ensure that everybody in the technical team also understands it, right? So there are some techniques, some ways in which you can document those requirements, right? So you have to be clear with those skills as well. Okay, so primarily, I would say close to 70-80% of your job, this is what you're doing. You will go spend time with the business team, understand the requirements, come back and then start documenting them. Okay, a typical day of your life as a business analyst would involve these two activities. Okay, so maybe a couple of hours in the morning you'll go spend time with the business team, understand the requirements. The rest of the day you keep analyzing it and then documenting it, and then when the next day when you meet the customer again, you will validate it, you'll take his approval. So that's the way you'll go on building your requirements, right? So overall the end deliverable coming out of this would be a business requirements document. Okay, So these two form the core of your okay. Sorry, I have a problem with my mouse, so I'm using my touchpad. So please bear with me. We'll be in a much better position tomorrow. Yeah. So we're looking at two primary skills that you have to acquire to play the role of a business analyst. Now you must be wondering, what is it that I have to go and then requirement illustration? Is it just like, go and then talk to the business team and just, understand the requirements? Well, that's one way of it, right? So if you get into any project, right, so you should have a framework or a methodology which you can follow to ensure that you understand the requirements 100%, right? So how can you be so sure that you have understood all those requirements, right? So what kind of questions should be asking? What are the techniques to engage the business team? So is it always a one-on-one discussion, or is it a demos, or is it a work session, right? So is it a reverse engineering? So there are multiple techniques, right? So there are around 10-11 techniques in which you can engage the business team to understand the requirements. So as a business analyst, you have to be aware of all the techniques, because depending on the context, some of them would be a lot more effective than the rest. Okay, so you have to be aware of all those techniques, and then you also have to be aware of all the techniques in which you can document it. So something like a use case, or a process modeling, or a maybe a wireframing. Okay, so all these are various techniques. So finally everything goes into a BRD. So you also have to understand what is the structure of a BRD. Okay, so these are the skills that are expected out of a business analyst, right? So primarily you'll understand requirements, you document requirements, right? So to put it in a very simple way, this is what you do as a business analyst. But to perform those simple tasks, you need to have a lot more complex skills, like your ability to engage the business team, understand the requirements in multiple ways and techniques, and also analyze the requirements and document it in multiple techniques like use cases or user stories or process modeling, right? So we'll look at all of those techniques when we actually get into our course. Okay. Apart from this, you also do a few more things, like you do the requirements plan. Okay. So while the project manager owns the end-to-end planning of the requirements, okay, so he would create that end-to-end plan, but for all requirement related activities, he will take help from you, right? So the more experience you get, the more key role you play into this, right? So in fact, in your initial years, maybe you're not help in planning, so the estimates and all would be given by some other senior business analyst, and you might just be playing the role of a role in eliciting and documenting the requirements. But as and when you grow experience, when gain experience, right, and you're in a stage where you can actually understand the business and a little more, and be in a position to plan or estimate those activities, right? Also start contributing into the planning activities, right? You also have to set up a few things like change management, scope management, risk management as part of the planning phase, right? So we'll learn all about that when we get into the requirements planning. Okay, so you will also ensure that you have to ensure that the requirements are communicated to all the key stakeholders into the project, right? So be it the business team or the technical team, you are the one who are actually communicating with all, right? So you have to ensure that everybody is getting their information needs, and then you are so not a key knowledge area I would say, but some best practices about how to manage these communications. Okay, you'd also spend your time identifying new project, right? So as an organization, what all projects can we take up? and which one is financially viable, right? So which one is not? What is the scope that we should be looking at? All these activities are done even before you get an approval. Okay. Now think about this scenario. Let's say the business team wants to, um, you know, uh, take up a project, but it costs like $2 million. Now the business head of that unit uh, is not going to just give away 2 million and then say, okay, no, let's complete this project, right? So you would say, okay, give me a report which tells me exactly what is the amount that I have to spend and what is the benefit I would get from it, right? So you would want to see that before taking a decision, right? So all that would generally be called as a business case document, right? So you'll have to justify why you have to invest in that project and what are the benefits you're going to get. So let's say, out of the business case, the outcome is like, okay, we spend $2 million in the next 6 months, and post that every year, we cut down our cost by maybe, 20%. So that translates into, let's say, $1 million every year, right? So you're getting like 1 million every year for the next 5 years, suppose, right? So maybe you're getting a return of 5 million out of 2 million that you have invested. So overall, it makes sense to take up this project because it is profitable, right? So all these analysis would basically constitute your enterprise analysis, right? So while primarily a business analyst would not be owning all this, he would be contributing to that, right? So the primary owner would be the enterprise architect, and you would be working with them to perform this, create this business case. Okay, so there is a role that you play as part of your enterprise analysis also. So in fact, in any project, this is the first step, right? So I am actually going by what is it the prominent things that you do, but if you go in a chronological order, this is the first thing that you do. You identify projects and get the budgets approved. Then you actually plan for the requirements. Then you understand and document the requirements in detail, which is a BRD. You also ensure that you communicate the requirements and ensure that everybody is good with the requirements. And finally, you will test them, right? So this is the last thing which happens into the project, right? So after you have documented your requirements into the BRD, then the technical team would do the design and development. After that, there would be a testing phase of the project, right? So the client would want to test the project. So you would coordinate with the customer, identify what all, ensure that the client tests everything and is happy with the requirements, sorry, happy with the solution. And in case he raises any defects, right, so you will analyze those defects and provide those inputs to the development team. So there is a role that you will play as part of the testing also. Okay, so broadly, as a business analyst, you need to be aware of these 6 knowledge areas. Okay, and who has classified this? There is an organization called IABA. Okay, International Institute of Business Analysis. Okay, so these are the guys who actually are the ones who offer the CBAP certification also, Certified Business Analyst Professional. We might have heard about it, or if not, maybe you can spend some time later in the day, try to search for that, see Certified Business Analyst Professional certification, right? So that's a well-known certification for a business analyst role. But the problem is that you have to actually work as a business analyst for a few years before you can take up that certification. Okay, so that's how it is. So yeah, so IIBA classifies the role of a business analyst into these 6 knowledge areas, right? And we have actually categorized the course into these 6 knowledge areas, right? So to be aligned with what IIBA tells us. So from a syllabus point of view, we are covering all of them. But the way we would learn would be, in a different way. So maybe, I'll start off with the basic use case and then example, and then, we'll build upon that for learning in this course, right? But overall, we'll cover all these topics, right? So if you look at it, even I have organized all the topics according to these 6 chapters, right? So part 2 to part 7 consist of all those 6 areas, sorry. And I have added one more chapter, which is the, industry overview and what is it that a business analyst does as part of this projects, right? So before we get into these 6 knowledge areas, so I understand that, most of you come from a non-technical background or maybe are new to the industry, right? So you might not have a complete grip on what exactly a business analyst is expected to do, or what is a technical architect expected to do, or a programmer or a tester, right? So we'll have all our, queries in our mind, right? There will be a lot of confusions. Guys, can you hear me? Hello? You guys can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
I got disconnected from GoToMeeting. Hey, before we continue further, to avoid these kind of situations, can you drop in your email IDs into the chat so that I have all your email IDs captured? And all of you. Yeah. All right, great. I have all 3 of your email IDs. Okay. So I was talking about the, the course outline, right? Now, okay, before that, let's take a checkpoint. So are you guys clear about what is it that a business analyst does now? I mean, at least from a role point of view, do you have an understanding about what is expected out of a business analyst? Any questions on that, any of you? Feel free to ask questions. I mean, see, a lot of you guys come from non-technical background or are new to the industry, so it's perfectly okay to ask any questions. Okay, don't inhibit your questions. The more questions you ask, the more you learn. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's move on in case you don't have any questions. So, like I said, I'll be covering those 6 knowledge areas what we just covered in the, I just explained in the last 2 slides, and we'll go into a lot more detail, and then get get the details about each of those topics. And in fact, the way we would learn it is we'll actually pick up a project, and then we would learn it through that particular project. So it's no theoretical classes that we're going to take, right? So we are first going to spend some time taking up a project. So maybe like something like a mobile banking app or a travel website or a hospital system, right? So the key is that I pick up projects which are easier to understand, right? So you don't want to go for complex projects because that creates a dependency on the the subject matters or the business team. So to take it away, we take up simple projects, and then we'll go through the complete cycle of how to create the BRD, how to create the test cases, or how to create the test the project plans, and how to manage the changes. All that we would learn from a particular example, right? So we'll pick up a requirement from that particular project, and then we'll apply it to that and then learn it in that way. So that would be the way I would be carrying out the training, right? And the topics that we would cover is along with these 6 knowledge areas what we discussed. I'll spend a few sessions, maybe this first 2-3 sessions, on how the industry works. So you'll get a lot more clarity on who are the key players in a project, right? So who is a project sponsor, who is a is a solution owner, who is a subject matter expert, and who is a project manager, technical lead, QA lead. Then you'll also look at who is the operations team. So you'll broadly know who are all the various players in the industry, right? When you get into an actual project, who are all the various roles that you could need potentially, and what is it that they do in the project, right? You'll get that clarity in the initial few sessions. You'll also learn about the various phases of a project, right? So now, we are not just focusing on the requirements part, but what happens after the requirements are completed, right? And who handles that role? And what are the various ways in which the projects could be taken up, right? Now, some projects could be done in waterfall, some could be done in iterative, some could be done in agile scrum model, right? So there are various ways in which you can execute a project, okay? So we'll broadly spend some time understanding those various, the project models, right? The SDLC models, as we call it, as software development lifecycle, SDLC. Okay, software development lifecycle. We'll spend some time learning about the SDLC life cycles, and we'll also spend some time on how a project is awarded to a particular vendor, right? So right now, consider this scenario that there is a client, let's say Citibank. Okay, now Citibank has a project worth, let's say, $2 million. So whom should it give it to? Should it give it to IBM, Accenture, Infosys? Which organization which IT vendor should it give it to, right? So right now there will be a lot of confusion, right? So I mean, consider yourself, you're one of those key guys who has to take that decision in Citibank of whom to give this project to, right? So, it's a little unclear to us at this point in time of who should be handling that project or whom should be awarded that project, at what price, right? How should I go about it? So we'll spend some time doing that as well, right? So we'll understand what is the process for identifying the vendor, and then, how to get the best price out of it. And finally, what is the document which comes out of it, which is a contractual document, the statement of work, right? So we'll learn all about this as part of the industry overview. Okay, so this creates a baseline. In fact, everybody in the industry should be aware of all these things. So it's not specific to a business analyst role, but a generic, industry overview that everybody should be, aware of who are working in the IT industry, right? So that sets up the baseline. Once we are comfortable with how things work in the industry and who are the key players that we interact with, then we would get into the actual, um, role of.
Yeah.
Yes, Sirisha.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I had a question. I also pinged it. I'm not sure if you checked it.
Yeah.
So when you said you will mention about you will also give a brief and explain us about the SDLC methodology. So are you going to cover all the methodologies or just agile and
No, in fact,
waterfall?
most of the prominent ones that we would be using, which are like, maybe the waterfall model, the iterative model, right? And then you have product implementation, you have V-shaped testing, right? And there is a prototyping, okay? And agile scrum model is another one which is of which is gaining prominence these days, right? So all the, most of the course is comprehensively covered. So that I can assure you, because I come from the industry background. It's not a theoretical course which I'm offering here. So I'm aligned to the industry, and since I'm already in touch with the industry, I know what exactly is expected out of the role of a business analyst. So,
Right.
so broadly, I'll ensure that I'll cover all the models in which, all the SDLC models in which you could be working in. All of them would be covered. And in case you feel that something is not added in, or you want some other techniques, feel free to put in that request. I'll ensure that I will cover that as a topic, and not just onto the SDLC models. Anything which you think throughout this course, right? So maybe through your when you're searching for your jobs, or maybe through your contacts, if you think that something is missing out, feel free to drop it. But I've ensured that the course is comprehensively covering all the topics that you as a business analyst should be knowing. Okay, that gives you some assurance. Yeah. So let's spend some more time understanding what exactly under each of these 6 knowledge areas that we'll be learning. Okay. Now, I might not be covering the same all the details in the same order, right? So I will not start off with planning and then go for illustration and all, right? Because while you learn all of these 6 knowledge areas, I'll start off with the basic requirement, right? And then see, okay, how do we understand the requirement? So maybe I'll spend some time on illustration and analysis first, and then we'll go to the planning, right? Because unless you understand how to document the requirements, it's a little difficult to estimate for that activities, and then plan for that, right? So the way I would teach you would be a little from a order point of view, chronological order in which I will cover them would be a little different from what it is listed down here, right? But all these topics what I'm explaining would be covered throughout the course. Okay. By the end of it, I think you'll have learned all these various activities under each of these specific points that you're looking at. Okay, so as part of planning, you'll figure out when you get into a project, right? So the first things, when the first day when you enter into a project, what is it that you have to do? And you have to first figure out who are the key people in the project, right? Identify their roles, and then the next few days, maybe the first week, you would spend time in creating the project plan, and then setting up the change management, scope management processes, and helping out the project manager to update this into the project charter, right? So you must have heard a lot of words in what we talked about, like project charter, scope management, change management, project plan, and all. We'll get more details when we actually learn about it. Okay, so by the end of this planning phase, you will have a detailed project plan. Okay, while the project manager creates it, you will have a contribution into that, and then you also have a project charter, so which basically covers all those ways in which you are going to operate, like how, if some change comes into the requirements, how is it that you're going to maintain the change, right? How is it that you're going to document your requirements? What are the templates? So everything would be identified as part of the planning phase. Okay, and then once the planning is completed, then you would actually start off onto your requirements, right? So you will have to learn all those various techniques. So there are 10, 11 different techniques in which you can engage the business team to understand the requirements. And then you have to document them. Now, when it comes to documentation, there are multiple techniques again available, right? But the most important two ones which we are using these days are the use cases. If you are working in the typical SDLC model, like waterfall, prototyping, or iterative, and all this, and user stories if you are working in a agile environment, like something like a Scrum model or Safe Agile or whatever are the agile techniques. You would capture the requirements in using user stories. right? So right now we'll limit our discussion to this point, but when we actually get into the details, I think you'll comprehensively learn what a user story is and what a use case is, right? Because we are expected to be experts in that, right? So that is something which definitely as a skill you should have. The rest of them you can even compromise, but this is something which you cannot. Right? So you have to be experts in writing use cases and user stories and understanding the requirements. Okay. So as part of the use cases and user stories, you will use a lot more other techniques like process modeling, right? And wireframes, document maps. There are multiple other techniques which help you in elaborating those requirements, right? You also have to be aware about the data modeling, right? So how is data stored into your systems? How can I interpret that if I'm given an ER model, right? Data flow diagrams are outdated, but still I'll give you a brief introduction about it so that you're aware of all those techniques, right? So that's the various techniques in which you can document your requirements, right? So you'll also learn about communication plan, the various artifacts, modes of communication, all the best practices and all, but not this is not like a core topic, I would say, right? So something you should build upon your communication skills. The best practices of communication, I'll share onto that. Not more than an hours of session, I would think so. Okay. Uh, then we'll also spend some time learning what is it that we would do as part of testing, right? So we would also do the, you know, um, um, system integration testing and user acceptance testing. So what is it that you do as part of SIT and then UAT, right? What is your role? So do you create the test cases or do you review them, and how do you analyze the defects, right? How do you create a test plan? So we'll get to a level where you can actually perform as a high level QA job as well. Right? So from a functional point of view, again, we are looking at all this from a functional testing point of view, right? So there will be other kinds of testing like performance testing, then security testing, right? Availability testing. There are a lot more testing specific activities. We'll not get into that. What we'll be focusing on is onto the functional testing. So which means we are testing the functionality of the system. Okay. So what is it that we are expected to do, and what is the overall process for that? We'll spend some time and learn that. Okay. And we'll also spend some time on building a business case, right? So if you just have an idea, or how to even identify the ideas for a particular organization, right? So in fact, they have to be aligned to their business strategy and the business goals. So how do you derive from that? So we'll spend some time on the enterprise analysis activities as well, right? So this is the core topics into the course, and along with that, we'll do a lot of other topics like maybe a session on Visio, a session on the SQL, a session on multiple other topics. I think once topics comes over, I'll explain that to you guys. But broadly, this is how the course is structured, right? So primarily, the course is tuned for people who are new to the industry, right? So I'm not offering any certification, clearance course here, right? So the focus would be that you gain enough knowledge to start working onto a business analyst role, right? So there are absolutely no prerequisites. So don't assume that you have any knowledge about what a BA role is, or you're completely new to this course. So that is the assumption we go with. So that ensures that you can ask any questions that you want to ask, right? So there's no, you don't really need to hold back on your questions or have that thought in mind. Okay, can I ask these questions or not? Okay, and the training material and all are well organized, right? So we'll just. I'll just give you a glimpse of what the training material would look like. Yeah. So you don't really need to worry about recording it yourself or taking notes and all. So we'll record the sessions. Every session would be recorded. So your batch would be batch 44, right? So all the recordings would be uploaded onto this portal. So you don't really need to worry about the recordings or anything. Uh, and all the training material would also be available, right? So whatever we are discussing as part of the sessions, right? So
So
primary.
I see it as batch numbers. Do we have a batch number? I mean, what's our
Yes,
batch number so
yours
that we
would be
can
44, batch 44.
44? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll create a folder onto this and then upload all the sessions onto it, right? Uh, so and again,
And you will email us a link to this website, right? I mean,
yes, yes.
we'll share
So
it.
so this you'll have to use your Gmail credentials for this. I see that all three of you have your Gmail account, so no issues with that. So I can provide access to your Gmail account, and you can access this site. Um, yeah. So coming back to the training material, it's all well organized now. You'll have all the presentations. You can download these presentations from the portal, right? So then there would be a live project. So maybe something like a let's say a travel website or a mobile banking, right? So I take up some examples like hotel management software. We can take up one that suits you, right? So we'll start off with a particular scenario in place, and then we'll build upon how you'll go about as a business analyst capturing the requirements for this particular scenario. So you'll start off with a high level detail, something like this. Now you'll have to detail out the requirements. So how do you go about it? So we'll excuse me. So we'll take it as a practical oriented course rather than some theoretical learning that you'll be doing, right? So we'll pick up a high level example case study and then build upon that, right? So how do you identify the use cases and how do you elaborate them? So all that would be part of the course. Okay. Then you also have a lot of additional reading material that you can spend some time on each of those topics, right? So we'll learn about all those topics, your additional reads. And another important folder is the templates, right? Now if you have observed throughout the course, whatever we are delivering is mostly a document, right? It could be an Excel or it could be a Word document. Most of the times it's a Word document, right? But at the end of it, we are expected to create only documents. So we are not actually doing any technical stuff into an IT project. We have to document our requirements. And where do we do it? Mostly we do it into a Word document. Okay. So the BRD or the change management or the the traceability, then the test cases, right, or the business case document. All these are mostly documents. So we'll spend some time on looking at each of those template as well, right? So what is it that we do as um, uh, how does that final deliverable look like, and what is it that we need to contribute? We'll all look into um, each of those templates so that we are confident that okay, this is what is your final deliverable going to look like. Okay. And we'll also I'll also give some assignments out of these projects, right? So if you do that, we'll also review that into the sessions, right? And we'll spend some time discussing it, and then I'll provide feedback, so that way you'll get that guidance also whether you're going the right path or not, right? So that would be the
So,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So while you mentioned about the assignments and we'll be doing some stuff, so having just Word on our laptop is enough, or you're looking for some
Yes,
other software?
yes.
Because
So you can,
Ritin also asked the same question on what are the tools that we use to create
so
the
primarily,
UMI
it's a Word
stuff.
document that we do, and we would use Visio, right? So we would use Visio to create some of those use case diagrams, but that's not the only
Okay.
way. We can even do that in Word or PowerPoint,
Okay.
right? But I'll explain
All
all
right.
those tools as well. But primarily the end deliverable is a Word document which comes out. right? And in fact, for drawing those UML diagrams and all the user stories, use cases, you don't even need to actually, have any software. You could even do that onto a piece of paper and then maybe, send it out to me, right? So even I'm okay that way, right? If you just write it down onto a piece of paper and then, um, you know, uh, send it out to me, like so something like this, right? So the point is you need to learn the technique. Not we're not focusing onto the details, but broadly, if you are able to do that, right? So when you're actually doing your job, you can do it in a much more you know uh, detailed fashion. But assignments, I'll just spend. I don't want you to spend like getting into the details and do all that. Conceptually, are you learning it or not? Right? Is there something which you're missing out? Uh, Something very important, we'll focus on that, right? So we'll spend some time on reviewing your assignments. But yes, to answer your question, if you have Word document, that is good enough onto your laptops. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
All right. And then yeah. So the detailed course content also is there, so that you can actually go through what all you'll be learning as part of this course outline, right? So each and every technique what you'll be learning is actually explained out in detail. So this acts as a reference. So while we might not go exactly the same chronological order, so the same sequence, but we'll cover all these topics when we get into our course outline. Okay. Yeah, I think let's take a stop over here, and tomorrow's session when I start, we'll get into the actual course outline. So I'll start off with the industry overview and then the business analyst role, right? So we'll learn about how a typical client organization is, how an IT vendor organization is, and then how are projects awarded to a particular vendor, and then what is a project organization structure, how are the SDLC models, what are the phases in each of those SDLC models, and how are they different. So we'll spend some time, nice 2-3 sessions to get this overview. And from there on, we'll focus on to that particular, case study driven topics. Okay.
Okay. So will the class be for an hour every day, or
Yes.
how's the?
It will be for 1 hour every day. Okay. We'll start off.
Or the weekdays, right?
Weekdays.
Or weekends?
Weekdays. Only weekdays. Yeah. So so it will take around 25 sessions to complete the course. So it's a 5-week course, I would say.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So
Yeah.
somewhere between 22 to 25, but usually it takes 25 sessions. Unless you don't have any questions, or you keep it like very. If it's just me talking, maybe we will end up in 22 sessions. But you have questions, and then we keep clarifying that. So maybe it takes around 25, 26 sessions. Okay. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Anything which you want to ask?
Nothing on my end. I'm just we'll wait for your email,
Right.
with the link to the drive, Google Drive, and everything.
Okay. Okay. I'll ensure that you'll get that. Yeah. The rest of you as well. Any questions? Okay. So so this is the same link that we'll have to log into every day, right? So just bookmark that email, and let's connect back again tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good night.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye.